All right, what's going on, Sooner Nation? You guys, we talked about it. We're changing the show a little bit. We're not going to talk about all things college football. We're going to talk about all things OU athletics now on this podcast, right? We're going to rebrand a little bit. Today, we're going to officially launch the Around the Bases podcast, right? It's going to be a show within the PG show. We're going to talk about Oklahoma softball, and I'm pretty excited. Got Andrew Smith over here. A lot of you guys are familiar with him on Twitter, but Andrew, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, I appreciate you coming on and talking a little bit of softball. I know that a lot of Oklahoma fans have really started to follow softball here in the past, what do you say, 6 to 8 years?
I would probably say it's a little bit more than that. I think OU softball has been really well supported since our first national championship in 2000. But I do think the exponential growth has continued in the last 6 or 8 years. So I do see that it's continued enough so that we've had to make several different stadiums within that time frame. So yeah, it's been really cool to see the continued growth of softball in Oklahoma, but also softball as a whole across the country.
Yeah, and it looks like we are going to be able to play the first game at home in the new stadium. Looks like it's going to be finished. At least that's the rumor. Looks like they're putting in the seats. So
I wouldn't even say it's a rumor. Josie directly said it should be ready to go March 1st. So that's really exciting stuff. When you more than almost completely triple capacity from Marita Hines. And trust me when I say the environment at Marita Hines is unbelievable. So tripling that capacity is going to be absolutely electric. I cannot wait to see it.
Yeah, so this is a team that has won 7 or is it 7 out of the last 11 or 7 out of the last 10 championships. They've won 3 straight in a row. So there's a lot of expectations, maybe even hype coming into the season about what Oklahoma is going to do, especially with building. I believe this is one of the larger softball stadiums in the country. It'll definitely be one of the nicest softball stadiums in the country. But you look at the recent rankings that had just came out, preseason rankings, and you see Oklahoma, of course, at number 1. But I think a lot of Oklahoma fans and people across the country are asking themselves, Oklahoma's going for 4 straight. Who could be the teams to take them down? You lose Jordy Ball this season to Nebraska. So obviously good pitching, as we saw with Stanford last year, can get you into the World Series. Could they be a threat? Obviously, you see Stanford up there. And then you see some of your normal common offenders. UCLA, Tennessee, Florida State. Clemson gave Oklahoma everything they wanted and more last year. So what are kind of some of your thoughts around this preseason top 25? I know there's a couple polls out there, but what's your thoughts here?
This one is really interesting. I think the top 10 is actually pretty solid for the most part. I do think there's a few teams overranked and a few teams underranked. Overranked is in the top 10 is probably Stanford. They are going to be dangerous. But my concern with them is still offense. As you saw last year, Najee Kennedy can absolutely pitch with anybody and can shut down any offense, but you still have to score some runs. Now they did add Taylor Kern from Indiana, and I think she's great. But when you only have really one great hitter in a lineup, you can pitch around them, as we saw people try to do with Jocelyn Allo a couple years ago. And you can kind of just manage those games around it, the ones that you're not hitting, and hope that Kennedy is just on fire. My concern with them also is pitching depth. Who else do they have besides Kennedy? We've shown time and time again that you can't just ride one pitcher all season and expect to make it deep into Oklahoma City. Georgia is going to be an interesting piece this year. They've added some pieces last year. They can absolutely smash. My friend Tommy is a Georgia fan. He is all about the home run ball. But they've added some interesting depth in the circle. So I'm really excited to see what Georgia's going to look like this year. But as far as like one team that I can foresee giving us the most trouble, and would not shock me to see them in the finals in Oklahoma City. And not a lot of people are going to be happy about this, but it's Texas. And trust me, I hate saying that because you won't find a bigger dislike person of Mike White than me. But they're really talented, and majority of their talent from last year was true freshmen. So they're only going to improve. And they've got 4 or 5 different pitchers that they can utilize. Now, none of them are maybe in the top tier of pitchers in softball, but they've got some really, really good ones, and several of them. So, and Mike, being a pitching coach, like, knows how to utilize them and utilize them well. So they're going to be very, very dangerous. The biggest concern for them, in my eyes, is their defense. That's been their downfall a few times. So Arkansas is an interesting one as well. I don't know what they're going to be. They've been up and down the last couple of years, but then they've added some pieces through the portal. I really like their head coach. I think she's great. So we'll see. And then obviously running out the top 10 is UCLA. I don't know who they have pitching. None of the names like really stand out to me off the page. Does that say that they can't be good? No. I just don't have high expectations for them in the circle. But their lineup really is strong 1 through 5. Past that, it kind of drops off quite a bit. And we saw that bite them in the butt last year in the postseason. So, and just a quick note about, obviously we lost Jordy to Nebraska. Kind of the same thing as Stanford, honestly. Like, obviously Jordy can pitch with anybody in the country, but are they going to be able to score runs? And do they have somebody behind her in case she doesn't have it that day, gets in trouble, or just to keep her from exhausting herself? And then probably my hottest take of the top 25, the team that I don't think will finish the season ranked at all, and this is going to probably piss some people off, is Oklahoma State.
I knew that was coming.
So they just lost too much, and they didn't add hardly anything. And I talked to some people that played against them in the fall, and they're like, that's not a good team. Like, they're in fact terrible. And on top of it, their defense seems to be getting worse, which their defense is what knocked them out of the postseason the last 2 seasons in a row. So I'm really, really concerned about that team and about that program in general. It just seems to be they're going backwards. And their high school recruiting is not improving. So he seems to be living through the portal, but then they didn't really add a ton or anything impressive this year. So that's probably a team if they finish the season ranked, it'll be 20 to 25.
That's interesting. Now, I look at this top 25, and one thing that sticks out to me is this is the last year Oklahoma softball plays in the Big 12. Look at how many SEC schools are in the top 25 here. 10 represent the top 25. And some of them, Oklahoma plays fairly often, whether it's in the World Series or regionals or whatever, right? Tennessee, you've got, I don't know if have we played Georgia recently? I know we've played Bama. I know that we've played,
I don't think
obviously
we have.
played Texas.
Or at least not in the last couple of seasons. We might have seen them in a tournament somewhere a few years ago, but not off of recent memory that I can recall.
Yeah, so that really sticks out to me, right? You know, this is going to be probably the last easy year that I think, because I mean, I'm looking at Oklahoma's schedule. I mean, this is going to be probably the last easy year they have to just coast.
This is
to
the last year that there's a chance they could go undefeated through the whole season.
Oh, I'm looking at the schedule, and it's. I mean, I'm having a hard time finding a loss. I mean, it's not.
Honestly, I'm predicting they drop 1 to Texas. That's probably their first losses to Texas.
Yeah, so I mean, looking at their schedule, you're kicking off the season in Mexico, which, man, I wish I could go to Mexico. Right? You're playing Duke, top 10 team. You're playing Washington, top 25 team. Utah Valley, Long Beach State. I think we expect Oklahoma to probably get through all of that non-conference stuff. You get to March 1st, home opener. You're playing Miami, Liberty, Louisiana. Again, nothing really there. I mean, I really think they could probably go undefeated in the schedule. I mean,
Well,
it
okay,
is
so
a
like I want to acknowledge that that's a possibility, but for me, and having covered the team last year and having some really unique perspective, as far as like the people I've talked to and some of the closeness that I was able to be surrounding that team last year, and knowing that the pressure that they felt with some of the last couple of years with like any sort of record that's coming up. I don't want to put that pressure on them. But I also look at this and go, that's entirely plausible. But I don't see it happening. And generally speaking, it's so funny. We talk about this every year. Patty almost sounds like she wants them to lose a game at one point to kind of like ground them again and kind of like get them recentered. Even though it seems utterly ridiculous for a coach to seem like they want their team to lose, even though she wouldn't actually come out and say it. It just kind of seems that way sometimes, that because it does help. Like they lose one and that pisses them off, and they're like, nope, don't like that, and they just kind of go on another run. So it's just gonna be really interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, there are some teams on here that can hang for a game. I said this last year. Like there was no one in the country that I think can beat them in a 3-game series. Like, and their mantra is no team beats us twice. Like they're very familiar that it's a 3-game series, whether it's a conference series, whether it's postseason, no team beats us twice. So you beat them once, good luck.
Clemson almost did it. They almost did it.
I mean, Texas almost did, right? Like, and I was there for both of those. I was there for both of those, and trust me, like, man, that was unbelievable. The Clemson one, like, still just, and partially because of what that day meant. That was Patty's birthday. It was the last, if they won, it was the last home game at Marita Hines. I think there was some other record associated with that day. I think it was the win streak. It was the day they broke the win streak. Man, like outside of winning a national championship, that day will forever like be a top X number of memory for me, below obviously any rings that they've won that I've been there for. But
is that one of the greatest moments in OU athletic history? I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When you're down like that in baseball or softball, I don't care. Like you finish like that. That is, I mean, it's got to be up there.
I could easily say it's a top probably 5 moment in OU softball history. To say OU athletics, that's a long time, and there's a lot of people that are going to care about a lot of football things. But for me and where I sit, I would probably say it's a top 10 Oklahoma sports moment.
All right. So I'm looking at this roster a little bit, mm-hmm. and it's interesting because it feels like OU lost a lot when it came to pitching. And I mean, and I say that because you lost Jordy Ball in the transfer portal, and that one hit a lot of people upside the head and left them absolutely shocked. And you look at what is returning. I mean, we talked about this in the green room. Not a lot of people were 100% there on Nicole May. And I even told you, I even sat there at times and said, if Nicole May is the person next year, I don't know if that's the pitching that we've had in the past. You've got Kirsten Deal coming back. She's a sophomore. She showed some promise last year. You've got some other right-handed pitchers with Nicole May, like Carly Keeney and Peyton. I'm not going to be able to say her last name. Monticelli. I mean, how do you feel about this roster?
I love the roster. Funnily enough, if there's one thing I'm concerned about, it's the offense. And it's not really a concern. It's just is it going to be what we're accustomed to, and are the fans going to freak out that we're not scoring enough runs, or we're not going to have enough run rules, etc. This offense is still going to be electric.
I mean, they only scored 34 runs, and wasn't it in the fall or something? And they only scored 34 runs, and they were on upset alert right there. So,
I mean, you also have to remember. I mean, fall, when you talk about most of it, like you're talking about some of the best pitchers in the country facing also the best lineup in the country. So they're both going to have their days. So like the fall is kind of a tough gauge because generally speaking, and Patty's spoken about this before, that it's actually a challenge to know how the season's going to go for a particular group because they're facing either the same pitchers constantly, so the hitters get reads on them and they can kind of get going, or if the hitters are seeing nothing and the pitchers are just dominating, it's like, well, of course, like they're the best pitching staff in the country. So it's not always a good read on how the season's going to go because it's literally best on best all the time. But I mean, kind of going back to Nicole May, and trust me, you won't find a bigger stan of Nicole May than me. I mean, she's only had 3 losses in her career in 3 years. Like, it's kind of wild to me how underrated she is. And she's coming in some massive, massive moments. Now, a lot of people like to go back to that UCLA game her sophomore year, but they just had her number. Like, one team had her number, and it just was in a really big game. And that was the year Jordy was hurt. So that was tough, right? Like, that's just going to happen at times. Like, that's happened to Jordy, right? And what I told you in the green room is she's a different style of pitcher than some of the dominant pitchers that we've had in the past. She's more of a use her defense, use soft contact to get outs, than just going to strike out the side constantly. Now, she can strike people out because she, I think, has the best changeup in softball. But she has to be throwing strikes for that to happen, which occasionally, she likes to live on the edges and get people to bite for that soft contact. So if they're taking pitches, she's going to get into deeper counts. But in reality, I think we've got 6 pitchers that we can use. I mean, you obviously mentioned Kirsten Deal. I think bringing in Kelly Maxwell was the perfect move because I think Kirsten Deal is so similar to Kelly Maxwell. And so having a year of Kirsten, working with Kelly and kind of learning from, but then getting to use both of them and not overuse one, I think is amazing. And Kirsten proved that Patty could trust her in some huge moments. I was there for Bedlam in Stillwater when she kept us in that game for that comeback. I think it was game 2 or game 3. But my goodness, she just had ice in her veins. Then you have S.J. Guerin, who might have been our best pitcher in the fall. And she's not a hard thrower, but she's got absolutely nasty stuff. Carly Keeney, another senior that we brought in from Liberty, who we saw last year. She's the one who shut down UCLA in the playoffs in the postseason last year. And then you add in Peyton Monticelli, who is a absolute flamethrower. She's shown that she can dial it in a little bit, even though she has her moments. Everybody does. But, I mean, when you have Jen Rocha, who's the best pitching coach in the country and proven that time and time again, I'm really, really excited about what this roster can do in the circle. Offensively, you obviously have to replace Grace Lyons, which is a massive deal at shortstop and in the lineup. I still don't know who's going to do that. I don't think they've solidified that last time I've heard. That position hasn't been won as of yet. So it'd be interesting to see how the lineup's constructed. But also remember, Patty changes things constantly, especially earlier in the year, experimenting and just seeing, because we've got so many girls that can play and play well. She's trying to like get them all experience, and so then seeing kind of who fits where, and then also writing hot hands. So I would say my expectations is you either have Tiara Jennings or Alyssa Brito at shortstop. Then the interesting thing is going to be who takes their spot. I think that's going to be. But then we've got some really exciting freshmen coming in that can absolutely smash. So,
and I mean,
really,
we've
really
seen it with
exciting.
Patty and this staff. They're not afraid to play freshmen.
No, they're not. As long as the freshmen have proven that they're not afraid of the spotlight, and they all shined in the fall.
Yeah, and I think it helps because look at how many seniors you have on this team.
Oh my gosh.
Jada Coleman, Tiara Jennings, you have Kinsey
11,
Hansen.
I think.
Kinsey Hansen
there's
back.
11 seniors.
There's so much experience to like help these younger girls out that, I mean, there's no reason why you can't put a younger girl out on the field and for her not to have felt like she's had a couple years of experience with all the other ones around her.
No, absolutely. And going to that, like just jumping ahead just a tiny second, like obviously I'm expecting us to win the national championship this year. Like college softball must keep us from winning next year, because if they don't, they could go on a 10-year run.
I won't be honest. I don't see it in 2025.
I'm just saying, like, I don't, but you never know with the transfer portal and everything else, the way Patty's been able to kind of refill holes and everything. But I'm just saying that's the year, that's the window for someone else to win, because the classes that I've already seen that we're building, like we've already got a commit from Sophia Bordy, who is, and I hate to do this, but like if you watch her swing, she is Jocelyn Allo. Like,
don't put that.
Not joking. No. Like, that is not me comparing that. That is Patty and the staff comparing that, and actually had her working with Jocelyn at one point because their swings are so similar. So that's not me trying to put pressure on her. That's me recognizing someone else is like, hey, like, but go watch her swing and go, oh.
I mean, yeah, I get it. It would be big time to get another person like that. I don't want to put that expectation on anybody. That's
not quite the expectation of performing as that, but like those types of the skill level, or at least the style of player, at least. You know, obviously the performance is going to be on the individual, but like she has that kind of body type, the swing, and the skill to at least be on that path. Now, obviously, you can't put the expectations of breaking any records or anything on her, but like just understanding that she is a high level elite player at the plate and also in the circle too. So just like looking at what we're building in the future is stupid.
So, I mean, you said it, 2025, like you got your window to beat Oklahoma softball. And I'm kind of looking at who really could beat us, right? And again, I look at Stanford because of Nyjah Kennedy. Then you have Jordy at Nebraska. Let's say they figure out something, being able to hit the ball. Do you think either one of those programs, and I know a lot of people, especially Oklahoma fans, are going to look at Nebraska and say, is that going to be the team that ends our run because they have elite pitching and we're unsure about our hitting?
I mean, I don't want to get in the weeds in the 25 that much as far as that individuals, because like, look,
I'm talking about this year. I'm talking about 2024. I'm not even talking about 2025.
But like, yeah, I mean, really, the good news about us facing Nebraska is they faced Jordy a ton in the fall before themselves. So like, nobody has faced Jordy more than Oklahoma players. So now, could she shut us down? Sure. But are they going to be able to score? I don't know. And it kind of goes back to the thing of like, could they beat us in a game? Sure. Yeah, they could. Are they going to win in a 3-game series? I don't see it. I mean, probably the team that I'm the most worried about, I'm going back to it, is Texas. And it's more than just their talent, and it's also personal with Texas. It's personal with Texas, and last year was the first time that you saw it be personal with Texas in softball. Like Patty has said that she doesn't see teams, she doesn't see rivalry that doesn't exist for her. It was. I wrote an article last year. It was very clear. Last year was the first time you could tell, because of the Mike White accusations, it was personal, and neither team likes each other. So, and no team outside of maybe Oklahoma State is probably going to be more motivated to beat Oklahoma than Texas. And we already have that target of everybody wants to beat us. So you get the everybody's best shot, but then like they tend to kind of step up and give it a little bit more juice. So it'll be really interesting to see, but I just don't see anybody beating us in a 3-game series.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though. OU's walking into the season, they didn't lose their win streak, did they? So it's going to be 53 games going into this season. Like,
yep.
You're going to have some people wanting to end that sucker, because
I mean, yes, but it's not about the streak. It's about just beating Oklahoma. Like in reality, it's no one really cares about being the one to break the streak. They just care that they can say that they beat Oklahoma. Now, that's an added bonus if you are the one, but now, and I think some of it is because maybe if we get towards the end of the season and they haven't lost yet again, then maybe some of that pressure starts to mount again. But I think at least for the first half of the season, it really won't have much to do with it until it really starts to like get towards maybe conference play. It's like, look, this streak is getting huge. And then maybe if you get to Texas, like that's about halfway through the season or just over halfway through the season, and
April
they still haven't lost yet.
And it's in Austin.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. That's where I'm saying, like, I really won't be surprised to see us drop one. Now, honestly, could we drop one before that? Sure. I mean, we played Duke, we played Washington. Like, there's a couple other really good teams, right? Like, we just have an off day, and they have their best day. It can happen. It's why we play the games. But as far as just expectations, I think that's the first real opportunity, I think, to see a loss come to that column.
Now, you mentioned Duke. I'm not, I don't know anything about Duke, but it's Duke. I don't think this team's
Duke in relativity is still a really new program. But they've had some really great success very, very quickly.
Because I know last year it was only a 4-0 victory, and then like we played Washington and it was a 5-4. So I get why you see those teams are potentially problem, but again, you get them super early in the season, so it's not like, I don't know. Like I feel like they're
but that's the thing, is super early in the season. If one team comes out sluggish and the other team comes out ready to play, like that can really be a quick one, right? But OU tends to start really well, and especially because we're going to Mexico, it's gonna be warm, so I don't think they'll have a problem with their bodies like just being tight. Because trust me, I played college baseball. Like playing sports in the cold just is awful. A diamond sport, because of hitting in the cold, is just miserable. But Duke has a really talented sophomore who's going to be their best pitcher in the circle. I don't know. I didn't really dive that much into their roster as of yet to see what else they have. They really didn't have much behind her last year. I don't even think we saw her. Actually, I think she started to really become their ace after we played them. I'm sure we probably did see her at some level throughout that game, but I don't recall specifically. But Washington is. I don't have drastically high expectations for, but they seem to always be solid to really, really good. So I expect them to be a ranked team the majority of the year. Probably lose some question mark games. They're like, what? But then probably win some ones that like you didn't expect them to. So just a quick go back to I think another team that is going to be really interesting to watch this year in the Pac-12 is Oregon. They almost came out of the Stillwater Regional last year. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they can do adding to what they did last year.
Yeah, and looking at another preseason poll, this is one that you were talking about earlier. This one is a little bit different. This one they have Stanford at 2, but a very similar in terms of teams that are top 25. So you're saying Oregon about number 14. They could be a threat in the Pac-12. Washington, they have them at 10 here. So, I mean, yeah, like Oklahoma's going to have 2 top 10 potentially matchups. And
yeah, no, for sure.
And that's going to be a tough. Yeah. But I mean, the good news is you get to figure out some things before you have to go play Texas. But I do agree with you now looking. I didn't realize we played both games in Austin.
And just remembering Baylor has a really a pitcher that I can't remember what her name is, but they had 2 pitchers that gave us trouble last year, and then one of them got hurt, and they kind of fell off after that. But like the one is still really talented. And but I believe those games are in Norman, so I'm not really worried about them.
Oklahoma.
But like
Oklahoma City.
Oh, they're in Oklahoma City?
Oh, well, so you get 1 in Oklahoma City and you get
2
in Norman, it looks like.
Okay. I'm glad they're doing that. That's so awesome to get.
We get quite a few in Oklahoma City this year. You get the Baylor games in Oklahoma City. You get Tulsa in Oklahoma City. Obviously, the Big 12's here. So,
it's really great to get the young ones experience in that stadium before you get to the World Series. I think that's really huge. But also it's great for softball in general. I think being able to have bigger crowds and show that like that people will buy tickets and come watch them. It's great for the game. So, but yeah, Baylor's somebody that like I can see giving us trouble in a game. I don't think they beat us per se, but now kind of going back to what you were talking about before with the SEC, there's a program in the SEC that I'm really curious where they end up, especially after this season, is Alabama.
Yeah, because I mean they've been up there and then they've kind of been there. So
yep. And after Montana Fouts left, and I personally just think that culture is really horrible. And I'm curious to see once Montana Fouts has left, how much changes. And they added a new hitting coach this year, and she was in broadcasting last year, even though she's one of the best hitters average-wise that Alabama's team, but she was a slap hitter, so I'm really curious like how that's going to translate. She didn't hit for power at all. Bama doesn't really have anyone that hits for power, so maybe they match the style of hitting coach to what they have on their roster. But I really just don't think they added much. I think they added a player from Central Arkansas who almost beat them in regionals last year that I really like, but I just don't see them having the depth. I'll be very surprised if they finish ranked as well. But
whoa, that's a take. People might jump on that one.
Yeah, I mean, look, and that's not saying that I'm predicting that they will. It just wouldn't surprise me because the SEC is pretty good, and I think that they were fortunate and got some love from the committee last year, and even being able to host. and they had the easiest regional and barely squeaked through. So I don't see them at least hosting like next year, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them fall out of the top 25 by this season's end.
That's an interesting one right there. So, well, hey, let's go ahead and let's wrap this up because we got to get going. But the next episode, people are going to want to be here for that because we're going to kind of talk about this roster a little bit. We're going to talk about some of these 2024 signees that have gotten on this team, which this class was absolutely loaded. And then not to mention with the girls that you have returning. I'm gonna have to get used to saying girls and not guys. So you talk about football. I'm gonna keep saying guys. No, and with the girls you got returning, this roster has a chance to, I think, continue dominance. I mean, it could go into 2025 being one of the best rosters in softball once again. So
2024. I mean, like, so in my opinion, personally, last year was the greatest collegiate softball team of all time. Like the dominance in which they played, the losing one game all season, the players that they had, the way they won, that they were just breaking records. Obviously the win streak. So like when you have a team that has to follow up what in my opinion is the greatest team of all time, you know, we're seeing this with Alabama and Nick Saban right now, right? Like, so a little bit of just expectations have to be modified as far as game to game. But I do agree that we should continue to see the dominance of winning that we're accustomed to this season.
Yeah. So over the past couple of years, we've averaged 3 to 4 losses. How many do you say Oklahoma has? If I had to say, and I'm saying being safe, I say they could drop 3 games this year. If you're just being absolutely safe and you're playing it there, you said they could potentially go undefeated. If you had to make a prediction today, gun to your head, what are you saying?
2.
2 losses. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's just because I know from personal experience playing in college and going on a massive win streak, and like my senior year, we went 58-8, right? Like, and 2 of those losses came in the World Series. So I understand how hard it is to continue a level of winning. And especially in a diamond sport, it's the easiest sport to not have it that day. And or just to be off by this much, and just something to go the other way, and momentum can shift so easily in this game. So I tend to be more conservative in my predictions of losses, just because I understand how hard it is. But looking at this schedule, it is the softest schedule we've had in a really long time, and some of that's because no one wants to play us. Now, I will say, I do believe some of these tournaments and everything, you can request teams to play or teams not to play. Some people were really upset we didn't get to see Nebraska at one of the early tournaments. I'm of the opinion, I believe they asked not to play us. And now I don't believe that's particularly because they're scared, but looking at where they are, who their schedule, what their potential, they could easily end up in Norman for a regional or a super regional.
Well, and I don't think you want to kill your early hype, right? I think you want to,
and it's not necessarily even that, because like you get forgiven by losing to us. Like in some cases, like just play us tough and you'll rise. So I don't think it's that thing. I think it's you don't want to give, because we adjust better than anyone else in the country. So you don't want to give us that preview before you see us in a regional or super or even Oklahoma City. So just because of proximity distance wise, which is sometimes what they use to determine those rankings to figure out who goes and where. Um, that's where I think I easily could see Nebraska in a regional here or a super. So if they end up maybe hosting, it'll probably be towards the bottom of the hosts. I think so. Like they could end up here in supers as well. So I think that's probably where some of that comes in as far as why we didn't get to see Jordy in Nebraska in one of those early season tournaments. But so it's going to be really interesting.
It's going to be interesting. All right. Well, that concludes our first episode. Appreciate you coming on, and I know we're going to get you on a lot more. We're going to talk some more OU softball. The season's coming up. It's right around the corner, like a couple weeks.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we're under a month. So I think 20 something days, I think is what we're
at. Yeah, I think opening day is on February 1st.
Yeah, so
not for Oklahoma
really
softball,
quick.
But I think just for general. Like February 1st.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing some one of the really awesome Twitter accounts. I can't remember something Gasso. They've got a countdown going on right now. Just the other day, it was 23. So we should be like hovering right around 20 days for our opening day.
Okay. All right. Now, where can people follow you and find you at on Twitter? I mean, I'm assuming a lot of people already follow you on Twitter, but can't make that assumption. So where can they find you at? Yeah,
I'm on Twitter at Sooner Soup Guy. It's not quite this face. It's the old man's face. It's a old joke from a long time ago, but it's a bit I'm just running with at this point. But at Sooner Soup Guy, I do tweet a lot about softball. So it's kind of coming into that time of year. So that's gonna be a lot of softball content on my page.
There's a lot of other great OU softball content creators on Twitter as well. So if you like softball, you need to go out there and follow them. And we'll try to keep you guys as up to date as possible. But thank you for tuning in. If you haven't already, make sure you do one thing, hit that like and hit the subscribe button. We'll see you guys next time.